Hey guys, it's me. Instead of doing the arrow, that'll be the next video I do before I get completely caught up. What you're watching here is a free premiere episode of Star Trek Picard, the first episode. I will put this in the link in the description below. There's going to be many things I'm going to talk about here. If you remember the final episode of Star Trek The Next Generation's All Good Things, it ended with a card game. Star Trek Picard starts with a card game. I'm going to give you a brief breakdown of the entire episode. This may be the only episode I'll be able to cover, but if by chance of fate I get a month-to-month pass, that's a whole nother discussion, then I'll start covering their episodes. Start with a card game on the Starship Enterprise, where Picard and Data are playing cards. Picard points out nice little hints. Well, long story short, he has to put all in, but Picard intentionally stalls because he tells Data, I don't want this to end. Well, unfortunately, and then he looks outside and it's outside of Mars. Picard notices something strange, starts asking questions. Data looks at him unusual. There's a rumbling. Data's gone the next image. And a series of explosions occur. It wrecks the Enterprise, and believe it or not, it was all a dream. The next image shows Picard going to his window, and he looks outside the vineyard, and it's the Chateau Picard vineyard. There's another image where these two are getting together. One thing leads to another, and they start having a night on the town. It gets interrupted by a few gentlemen in these PSYOP uniforms. They throw the dagger at the man and stabs him right in the heart. Well, the young lady, she's not having this. She fights back. She takes these guys out. And then next image she sees is Picard in her head. Her full intent at that point in time is to find Picard. Here's a small sample of the introduction of Star Trek Picard. Totally different. The music is totally different. Music is a little more mellow, a little more laid back. By the way, there was an Easter egg I wanted to point out after Picard woke up. Picard gets visited by his dog. He calls his dog number one, referencing back to Commander Riker. Picard is going through his vineyard with number one, of course, and two characters enter the fold here pretty soon. Now, one of these two characters is this female lady that's with Picard. My guess is she is a worker, and it turns out we learn of her species as the episode progresses. Judging by the look of these characters, they look Romulan. There is a backstory, believe it or not, that's mentioned later on in the episode about these two characters. Now, this is the other one, but what I want to point out here, there is a holographic style television that this gentleman is watching, and it talks about commemorating the history of what happened on Mars. There is another backstory, once again. Here in just a little bit, I'll explain via what Picard has to do next. This next image fast forwards here to Picard having to conduct an interview with an organization known as the Federation News Network. My guess is the Federation at this point has gotten so sophisticated that they have now put out Federation-wide news, and they even mention it's throughout the galaxy. This young lady here is one of the news anchors conducting a personal interview with Jean-Luc. And a couple of topics really puts Jean-Luc on edge. One of them talks about an evacuation of Romulus. They mention about some sort of supernova occurring at Romulus, almost as if it was doomed the planet to its destruction. The other one that really got him uncomfortable was the situation with Mars. Apparently, a situation occurred on Mars, and 92,000 people were killed. And they kept bringing up synthetics. Synthetics, kind of like Data, but the way they made it sound, the synthetics, something happened to them, turned bad, and was responsible for the annihilation of the 92,000 people on Mars. Now, this is the young girl that escaped her apartment because those covert guys were trying to come after her. She walks along town's area. She notices Picard on the television set, and she knows where she has to find him. Now, Picard sits here in his chair, enjoying himself, watching the vineyard with number one. And then he gets an unexpected visitor. It's her. She's in tears. At first, he gets alarmed, but then he realizes there was something unique, something special about her. Explains that the men that came in that killed her fiancé, she doesn't know where to go. She's worried about Picard's safety, but she wants to confide with him, and she does. And he's all accepting of her. made her at home, made her tea. Picard wakes up out of bed. He looks into his vineyard and notices Data under a tree in his old Starfleet uniform from back in the days of the Next Generation. And he's painting a picture. And then when he gets down there, the next image you see is Picard in his old Next Generation uniform. What this is a painting of a girl in a robe. Now, this gives a particular clue about this very episode and possibly unveils everything that has to do with the entire series. Tons of Easter eggs here. Them wearing both Data and Picard, both wearing their old homages of their Next Generation uniforms. The resemblance of this girl, the girl that came to his vineyard and wanted refuge and safety, she is going to seem somewhat familiar to you when this is all explained. And when Data asks him, would he like to finish it? Picard responds with, I don't know how. And Data comes back with, that is not true, sir. Referencing that he knows what he has to do. Then we see Picard look at that very picture that Data was painting. Picard knows this picture he has seen somewhere. Not just his picture, but the lady in the picture. Where has he seen her? The helper tells Picard that the lady has taken off and disappeared. The only one in her bed is number 1. So he has to make it a personal mission to look for her. Or if nothing else, look for the information and clues about this picture that is above Picard. He goes to Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco. Lots have changed in the last 20 years. You see the image of the giant library and storage facility in which Picard and a hologram is introducing to him. He has to find the one that belongs to him. Now he's asking all sorts of questions while he's going down this way. And there's all sorts of Easter eggs in this vault facility that he's in. Image of one of the ships. There's also a knife and dagger that he got from the Klingon Empire as homage for him to do active battle. You notice the book here. He was an avid book reader while he was on the Enterprise. This is reference to, I want to say either season 5 or season 6, where they had on the Enterprise with the children, Captain Picard Day. This image on the left, that is a model of the Stargazer. That was one of his first ships he was a captain on. Now he had received a giant block that he had put down on a centerpiece with the code 227. When he uncovers it with the cloth, it's the same painting that's hanging up inside of his house there at the vineyard. Picard is all panicky, wondering if somebody actually broke into this facility. He verified with the holographic narrator. She verifies it was not broken into. But he asks a very important question. What was the name of this painting? Because she even verified that not only was this the painting he was put in a vault, there was another copy of that painting at his vineyard. It's called Daughter. Now, the young lady who ran away, she goes to a remote spot and turns on one of her holographic communicators, and it's her mother telling her different things to do. And something struck a chord with her. Her mother mentioned she needed to go to Picard, and she needed to go back. In this next scene here, the young lady does find Picard. They have a conversation. She wonders if she's going nuts. She's not going nuts. He figures out she has a gift, and she's very, very talented, extraordinarily talented. He even tells her how she was the image in the picture. Now, if you've not caught on yet, this individual is an Easter egg in itself. I'm about to explain why. Some of you are going to find this a familiarity, but if you haven't watched Star Trek The Next Generation, the series, you might want to look into it. At some point during the series, Data created another organism. He created some type android 2366, or in the case of this young lady right here, he created Lao. The entire episode devolved around the programming of Lao and how it evolved so quickly that she developed emotions. Unfortunately, the emotions created a malfunction and she stopped working. Data had to put him away. Considering the circumstances of this episode of Star Trek Picard, it makes me wonder if Starfleet managed to get a hold of the information of Data's creation Lao and evolved into something far more advanced than Lao. If you watch Star Trek Picard in this first episode in full detail, you'll understand why Taj was an evolutionary step from Lao. Now, this next scene is a fight scene because those men pop back up and they're after her. So they proceed into one area of Starfleet headquarters as they are on the run. Long story short, they get cornered. Those very covert men show up again with weapons, but she was not going to have it. She fought her way through. As she beat up one of them's mask pops off to reveal himself. It turns out these covert individuals were actually Romulans. Romulans after her. Well, she fights off almost all of them. Now, this last one here she takes down. He exposes his helmet, but he spits out a green mist. The mist is an acid mist. As in, he spits the mist on her, and it starts to eradicate her skin and burns it. Burns the gun. Burns everything. I mean, ooh, acidy hot. I mean, it was bad. And once it got onto her, enough of her, Picard was close enough, it caused an explosion and kicked him back. Now, he woke up, but before waking up, he saw images of everything he had to do up to this point. The dreams about Data, the girl, having to visit the vault. Everything he found out from there comes to learn some disturbing information. He found out everything. Her name was Taj, that he figured out she was a synthetic. He figured out that Romulan assassins were after her for some reason. He wasn't sure why. They were under the presumption it was a cloaking device that she activated. One thing was for sure. He had to get some information about her and about how she was a synthetic and learn the history about her. For that to happen, he would have to go to the Daystrom Institute in Okinawa. That was the solution. Now he goes to the Daystrom Institute and talks to this doctor. And when they enter the section for the synthetics, the words that comes out of Picard's mouth is, it's like a ghost town. Well, apparently after the annihilation on Mars, Starfleet got cold feet and decided to discontinue the synthetic project because these were dangerous people. He came here to learn history about Taj. Now, he would ask some questions involving her, if human synthetics could be evolved and developed better. At first, she thought he was crazy. But when she noticed he wasn't laughing, she knew this was a serious talk. Then he found bits and pieces of data inside of a drawer. He knew right then what he had to deal with. The key to all this, as she explains, is to a gentleman named Bruce Maddox. I have a feeling Picard will run into him some point in this first season. He was the mastermind behind all the synthetics that were created. This conversation that he learns how Data's creatory chip could be evolved into other synthetics. And then that's when he learns Taj was not an only child of Data. Taj was actually a twin. In other words, the twin of Taj is floating around somewhere. The next scene takes us to the Romulan reclamation site. Basically a space station style colony that's within the perimeters of where Romulus used to be. The next image you see on the space station is this guy here named Narek. He approaches this young lady. It turns out her name is Soji. Soji, it turns out, is a doctor. Has personality traits. She's heavily evolved as far as intellect, and the two strike up a conversation. As it fades away from the doctor and Narek, you start to see where the resettlement camp is. Looks like an abandoned Borg cube. Very interesting that Romulans would take up settlements inside of an abandoned Borg cube. Then it goes through a promo of future episodes of the series. Picard putting back on his chess communicator, putting together his team. The doctor learns some things about where she's at, that she could be in danger. And he runs into a few old friends, including one from Voyager and then old members of his crew. So it's going to be interesting how the rest of this series plays out. And if this description took a little longer than normal, I was just fascinated on the fact that I was able to watch this for free. Like I said, I will put the YouTube link to the Star Trek Picard free series premiere episode in the description below. If I'm able to get this all access channel, I'll be doing more videos. And according to the schedule, If you do have it, Star Trek Picard will be on the app every Thursday with new episodes. Something to keep in mind. If you do have the series, cool. Now, next part. We're going to break some things down. First of all, I find out different Data is versus this. Notice there are some differences between Data. He had unusual but regular eyes in this format. Data of this, and in this format, they're a little more synthetic, a little more robotic, if I didn't know any better. Now, considering the fact that Brett Spiner, the gentleman who plays Data, has gotten older, his face is more fitted and everything. Even his hairstyle has gotten a little different. A lot of people were talking about this here when the first trailer with this show came out. How were they able to reach perfection involving androids and to synthetics? I mean, did Starfleet Command get their information from Data as far as their experiment with Lowell and then evolve into this? You know, was it Starfleet alone? Did the Federation have a hand in it? Did Section 31 have a hand in it? I remember this Joker and his little crew back from Deep Space Nine. They were a very nefarious crew. I would not put it past me if somehow Section 31 has a hand in this whole entire ordeal with these synthetics. They have the technology. Section 31, in my opinion, is the Central Intelligence Agency of Starfleet Command. Another thing, what the hell completely went wrong? The reason why I bring up Section 31, were they the ones that corrupted these synthetics to commit the atrocities they did on Mars? That also needs to be explained at some point in the season. And this Federation News Network, if I didn't know any better, you might as well call it Fake News Network, because they were doing their damnedest to get under Picard's skin. Oh, one thing to point out I didn't earlier, apparently Picard was a retired admiral, and through the conversation of this, he got out of Starfleet because Starfleet was not itself anymore. There needs to be an explanation story as to why Picard validates that claim. And maybe between his old friends and everything, he could find that out for himself. Not only that, maybe then we can figure out who this special force operation group the Romulans had. Are they from the Romulus facility? Are they actually members of Section 31 who decided to volunteer their services to Section 31 to stop this girl? There's some gaps here in the story, but I understand. This is the first episode. It was a pretty good episode overall. And the biggest question of all, do I get the feeling that at some point in this first season, maybe if it gets more than one season, will we eventually see Data once more? Not in a dreamscape, but Data in actual form. These are questions I want to know. Give me your thoughts on this. Give me a comment. Tell me what you think, guys. I want to know. And like I said, in the description, I will have this link to the YouTube to the free episode. If you haven't got CBS All Access and interested in Picard, you might want to take a look at this and think for yourselves. Take care.